Okay, whenever you're ready.
I'm Chris Wachowski. This is The Gauntlet, and you're watching 222 Productions.
All right, perfect.
So, the semifinals have begun, and all in all, I liked it. It was more enjoyable than most of the qualifiers, and it's a nice breath of fresh air. Now, one of the big differences this season, for those of you unaware, is that they filmed all of the qualifier rounds first, then they filmed all the semifinal rounds. Now, this is the first time in a normal season that they did this, and the semifinals and the qualifiers were filmed in different locations. So now we are in the Universal Studios Hollywood theme park. I'm going to be there for all 4 semifinal episodes. And looking at the course, one of the things that I was a little disappointed with was that because we had a gap in filming between qualifiers and semifinals, I was hoping that the semifinal course, that the blueprint, the core of the course would be changed a bit. Simply because you don't have the problem where you film both episodes back to back. You film the regionals and semifinals back to back. You don't have to worry about that this time around. So I was hoping that, we wouldn't have basically a lot of the same stuff we would normally get outside of the split decision. So, for example, I think I would have really liked if they had replaced the shrinking steps with some other first obstacle, even if it was just like the archer steps or some other first obstacle that they've used in the past, just for the sake of it being, different. But yes, in this course, the first obstacle was the shrinking steps, and then the return of lunatic ledges, which I was surprised about simply because so many times in last season, and you get it this season too, where people get stuck on that second ledge and just kind of stand there. So I'm surprised they brought that back. Actually took out quite a bit of people too. Third was Tilt-A-Whirl, back-to-back, but now in the semifinals instead of the qualifiers. It's a good obstacle. Fourth is the spin bridge, and then the fifth obstacle is wall-to-wall, which is like Tilt-A-Whirl, but instead it's spider flips instead of bar hops. But after the second time you spin, you have to transfer to a very generous cliffhanger ledge that has, I believe, an 8-inch drop. And then this was one of the other changes that I would have liked to seen, is that the sixth obstacle is still the warped wall. And I would have actually have not had a problem if they got rid of the warped wall for the semifinal course. Keep the warped wall for the qualifiers, but I've always been of the mindset with this course that, because the only reason they kept the warped wall was because of how the semifinals was originally formatted. It's essentially it's the same course but extended, but because it's a different course, you don't need to have the warped wall there. At the very least, I would have liked to have done something different with the warped wall if they insisted on keeping it there. For example, they could have made it a little bit taller, maybe shorten the run-up, something like that. Change the rules so that it's only 2 attempts, or I don't know. Would have been nice to something different. Once again, the 7th obstacle is the salmon ladder, which has been there every season with the exception of the first season. After the warped wall, I would not mind at all if they had replaced this with anything else, literally anything else. It's just been there. It seems so arbitrary, and it kind of goes into the whole warped wall thing. It's like you don't need the salmon ladder there. You could replace it with another obstacle. But whatever. 8 was corkscrew, which was surprisingly ineffective. It took no one out, and maybe partially that's because the people who would have failed it didn't reach the corkscrew. I couldn't tell by watching if there was anything inherently different that would cause it to be easier. I think in this case, it's just a case of not enough people made it to the obstacle to make a difference. But that could be me. That could just be me. And then 9 was the brand new split decision, and this split decision is so much better than the qualifier split decision because you have to choice between upper body and lower body balance. It is amazing it is such a better format for a split decision. The first choice is the inverter, which is a new obstacle. I've seen obstacles like it on ninja gyms and stuff, but it's like a board. You gotta flip it one way, you got a cliffhanger ledge, you gotta flip it the other way, you gotta do that twice. There's a lot of basically turning to one side, getting to the other side, and all that. And then your other choice is the tuning forks, which is, I think, it's really good as a ninth position obstacle because it's really hard. It's perhaps the hardest balance obstacle they've ever made. And so putting it in the ninth position as the split decision choice actually makes it a really tough decision. So do you go arms or do you go legs? That's the ultimate question that people had to go with. And I really like this choice. And the final obstacle was the spider trap, which is an obstacle I'm perfectly fine with. You know, I know some people would like to see something else, but I don't necessarily mind it if they can't come up with something better, because as much as I liked the invisible climb and the elevator climb, invisible ladder and the elevator climb, I should say, it just made things way too hard as a final obstacle and created too few clears. So some of the other rules changes. Now top 3 women instead of normally top 2, moving on to Vegas. I'm guessing it's because there's only 4 semifinals instead of the usual 6. So that means that there's still 12 women who move on. And the Power Tower is back with the safety pass on the line. I will talk about the new Power Tower course, but I was very pleased with it, to say the least. So we start things off with Christian Yost. It's interesting kind of what they chose to show early on with how people progressed on the course. You don't have, in terms of the full runs that they showed, you had very few front half fails. So Christian Yost failed. He ended up failing the inverter. They made a whole thing about how he plays classic video games and classic arcade games, and that sounds like my type of guy. And he is moving on. He chose the inverter, failed the second half of the obstacle. And then Christine Brophy got fast forward and failed lunatic lunges. Sam San, unfortunately, failed the spinning bridge. And Carmen Shelby failed the wall-to-wall. Then they decided to show us Isaiah Wakeham, which I thought this was a really cool profile piece because they talked about how he is an artist, but more relevant to the show, he actually has designed some of the t-shirts for other ninjas, which I thought was a really, really nice touch, and I thought it was really cool. And plus, he's competing with his sister side by side. He also made it to the split decision ninth obstacle, and in the middle of him trying to complete the inverter, he said, "This was a bad idea." And Akvar said that he was looking a bit sus. So Akvar is definitely up on the internet lingo, at least when it was filmed. But unfortunately, he also went out on the inverter in basically the same spot that Christian Yost did. And in other people in other runs, Perry Madison failed the spinning bridge. I wrote backwards for some reason. I don't remember. Caleb Benson unfortunately failed wall to wall. They're both eliminated. And then they showed Tiana Webberly and her mocap stunt work. I thought it was fine. I thought it was cool. They always try to I guess they kind of usually they try to take people's jobs and they come up with half-baked reasons for why it relates to Ninja Warrior. I will say it at least made a little bit of sense this time because it's I got to stay fit to do these stunts, so it helps with ninja training. So okay, that makes sense. Tiana made it all the way to split decision. She actually had difficulty getting the wall-to-wall to spin, had to use her whole body, kind of just hang and and get that around. But she was able to get to the split decision, and unlike the two men before her, she chose the tuning forks. But unfortunately, she slipped right off the middle fork and was eliminated at that point. But she moves on to Vegas. That's the good news. And then even, this was weird, they actually did fast forwards after her run, before the commercial break, and then they did more fast forwards after the commercial break. So Wei Wei Chen failed Lunatic Ledges, Wade Lupp failed the Spinning Bridge, Adam Nades failed the Lunatic Ledges, and Jade Buford failed Tilt-A-Whirl. And then they went to show Maxfeinberg really kind to showcase the whole band geek who's still good at Ninja. Maxfeinberg has done really well in competitions in NNL and I guess maybe other leagues, who knows. But most importantly, NNL. He had a lot of difficulty on Tilt-A-Whirl. Maybe because he's so light, but he could not get those things to spin. It took him a while. I was getting worried about his ability to complete the obstacle, but he was able to complete it eventually, and he chose inverter for the split decision once he got there, and he completed it. He made it look good. He skipped the final ledge and went straight for the dismount, which is probably the best decision for him, and he was able to get up the spider climb and finish in like, I think it was like 7 minutes and 19 seconds, if I remember off the top of my head. But overall, very impressive run from Maxfeinberg. He's going to Vegas. I'm personally not surprised. This is the point where we got the Universal Studios promo, really trying to promote the park like they always do. You got to get this for 4 weeks because they're going to be there for 4 weeks. In more fast forward runs, Christian Washington, Sophie Shaft, and Caleb Downen all failed the Lunatic Ledges. It took out a lot of people. Then they featured Zunik Levette, and they really emphasized her past of failing the warped wall and how she really wants to clear it this time around. And during her run, Akvar said, "I think this is it. She's finally going to clear the warped wall." And I thought they were projecting super hard that she was going to clear the warped wall this time, and then she fails Tilt-A-Whirl, much to my surprise. Like, really big surprise, where I was accidentally not looking at the screen. And I was like, wait, what happened? I had to rewind. When she was going to dismount the final cradle, she swung too hard, and she popped out, and she fell. And she had, I think it's safe to say she was shocked. Definitely had the look of someone who was like, oh my God, this is not happening right now. And I can certainly understand that mindset. But the good news is she was able to sneak in the final women's spot. So she is going to Vegas. Hooray! And then I was very surprised that they fast forward Lance Picas because they were promoting him all episode up to this point. But he ended up failing the inverter, so he's going to Vegas. Basically, anyone who fails split decision, whether it was inverter or tuning forks, they're all going to Vegas, as we learned. And then then they showed Brian Burkhart, the lawyer ninja, and they did the whole lawyer commercial, but in a ninja law type of thing. And I thought this was great. Like, ANW and comedy usually doesn't go hand to hand, but when they land it hard. There have been some comedy segments over the years that when they get it, they do it super well, and this was one of them. I thought this was so entertaining. I thought it gave a lot of personality. I just thought it was very funny. I do like that they implied that Brian is Brian was able to lawyer Daniel Gill into moving on to the next round, even though they put up a disclaimer that that's not true, because they. No, it was funny. I thought it was genuinely funny. I really liked it, especially at the end where Karsten, I believe it was Karsten Williams, was like, wait a minute, that number's too long. That's too many numbers. And Brian just pushes him off screen. Funny stuff, honestly. And then he had what I could only describe as just I think this was my favorite run of the episode. By far my favorite run. He cuts his face on wall to wall. He hits one of the ledges face first, blood just coming down from the bridge of his nose area. And so now he's fighting with blood loss, trying to complete this course. I'm guessing they gave him towel to wipe his face in between the warped wall and the salmon ladder. And he got split decision, and he probably chose tuning forks because he was tired at that point. Very tired and probably had a headache, losing blood. He chose the tuning forks, and he clears. And it was like, oh my god, he did it. This saved, and actually what makes the split decision even better is that now that you have the power tower in play, there's actually some extra strategy. Because one of the issues with making the split decision the ninth obstacle is that, let's be honest, most of the time, when you make it to the ninth obstacle, you're moving on to Vegas. It's very rare that someone will reach the ninth obstacle and then don't move on to the next round. But because the power tower and the idea of trying to get one of the two fastest times comes into play, there now is extra strategy to clearing the balance obstacle instead of the upper body obstacle. So Brian ended up saving a lot of time, and it took him forever to get up that spider trap. He was tired, but he was determined to get through it, and he ended up beating Maxfeinberg's time by about a second. It was 7 minutes 18 seconds, and I was just like, come on, get up there, because you don't expect Brian Burkhart to get this type of feature from ANW, but he did, and it was so good. I really, really liked it. Absolutely. And spoilers, that 1 second difference is what got him to the power tower. So in more fast forwards, Casey Boutier failed wall to wall, and Jonathan Horton failed what the hell is it called? Lunatic Ledges. Oh man. And then they showed Isabella Wakeham. She made it to the inverter and failed there. So they're both moving on to Vegas, both Isabella and her brother Isaiah. And mom has to get a tattoo, which is like, I don't know. I wouldn't do that to my mom. But that's just me. Don't know. Yeah, different families. In more fast forwards, China Hart failed the Lunatic Ledges. Corey Tokason failed the Spinning Bridge, and Michael Larcy failed wall to wall. Owen Dyer failed the tuning forks, and Abel Gonzalez got fast forward, unfortunately, but he still cleared. And what was described as one of the best runs of his career. And it looked really good. I'm happy for him. They showed Elijah Browning mid-run, starting at the Spinning Bridge. They mentioned that in addition to all the other stuff he does, he also works as a model, which is news to me. Was not aware of that. He lost his hat on the corkscrew, and then Zuri gave him a new hat, which, I mean, it didn't last very long because he fell very quickly on inverter. He just, I don't know what was going on. He just couldn't get a grip. He just kept slipping down, and he ended up going out there. But you know what? He's moving on to Vegas, and he's a really talented competitor, so I expect good things from him. Then they showed Darren Perez from Guam. And that's a name that I recognize. I've heard a lot about. Glad to see him getting featured in American Ninja Warrior. Once again, showed him mid-run, which is like, whatever. This time at wall to wall, he chose the tuning forks at split decision, and he failed, slipped in the middle. But it's good enough to get to Vegas. He was very happy to make it to Vegas, and I'm happy for him to make it to Vegas. He looks like a strong competitor, and I look forward to seeing him in Vegas. And then in more fast forwards, Anthony Porter failed the inverter. Isaiah Thomas failed the tuning forks, but hey, they're both moving on. And then Jody Avilla got a run next. Had a very close call on Spring Bridge, and they did when they got to the spider flip portion of wall to wall, Akbar said he looks tall enough that he can just reach out, and then he reached out, and Matt and Akbar laughed, and I laughed. I thought that was pretty funny, and then shockingly, and I mean very shockingly, he fails the cliffhanger drop portion of of wall to wall. And it just happened so quickly because he went for it. It went down really fast, and they just swung off. And then they showed in the replay that his left hand just straight up missed the cliff. And similar to Zunik, he had this expression of just like, oh my god, I cannot believe this happened. And we found out that he was now in 15th place with one runner left to go. And that being Daniel Gill. In storyline, the man that Brian Burkhart got into the semifinals. They did a whole flashback of him failing the final stage and how he's been training the rope and everything. And they mentioned that they cleared the semis for the past 5 years. Well, the good news is that it's now 6 years in a row. He chose the tuning forks. He didn't need to in terms of time. And I think he could have beaten Verter. I don't know, maybe he just decided, screw it, I'm going to try the tuning forks. He ended up clearing with a time of 4 minutes and 40 seconds, a good amount of time ahead of Brian Burkhart. But at the end of the day, Brian, still good enough to get to the Power Tower. Max just missed out. So the Power Tower was Daniel Gill versus Brian Burkhart for a safety pass. Now, I really like the new Power Tower. So you got a bunch of rails, kind of like a rail ladder, but it's a bit of an inverted slope. And then you go up to a rope climb, you go up to a ring hop / ring slider combo, you go into an angle salmon ladder, which is like an easier salmon ladder, and then you take that into the dropping shelves. Dropping shelves is the only obstacle that has been in a previous Power Tower. Well, I guess the rope climb too, but I mean it's the rope climb. So this was a good race. I liked watching this. They were pretty neck and neck up until the ring hop, and then from the transfer from the ring top to the salmon ladder is where the most important moment of this race happened. Brian Burkhart made the perfect transfer from the ring to the salmon ladder bar. Daniel Gill missed the bar, and then when he tried to recover, he took the bar off of the ladder and was frantically trying to get it back onto the ladder so he can continue on the course. Meanwhile, the entire time he's fumbling in the air, Brian is completing the rest of the course, and at this point, it was a case of the only way Daniel can win is if Brian falls. He did not fall. Brian won, and what I think was safe to say, an upset. I believe that if you were betting money, someone would have won a lot of money betting on Brian Burkhart. But Brian gets the safety pass. And as they say, that is why they run the course. They run the race. Because despite what all the odds may say, the person who wins might not be the one that you expect to win. So let's take a look at the results from this episode. We had 10 people fail the lunatic ledges. That's a lot for obstacle 2, because no one failed the shrinking steps. 6 failed tilt-a-whirl. 3 failed the spinning bridge. 5 failed wall-to-wall. No one failed the warped wall or the salmon ladder, or corkscrew for that matter, which was, I think, one of the bigger surprises of this episode. 7 people failed inverter. 4 failed the tuning forks. No one failed the spider trap, and 4 people completed the entire course. Here are your people moving on to Vegas from the first semifinal. So first, the clears. We had Daniel Gill, Brian Burkhart, who won the safety pass, Maxfeinberg, and Abel Gonzalez. And now everyone else in the top 15 are people who failed the split decision in obstacle 9. So we had Owen Dyer, Darren Perez, Ryan Meeks, Isaiah Thomas, Christian Yost, Elijah Browning, Isaiah Wakeham, Anthony Porter, Lance Picas, Isabella Wakeham, and Tiana Weberly. And rounding out the top 3 women is Zunik Levette, who failed tilt-a-whirl. So there you have it, 16 people moving on to Vegas from the first semifinal. Let's see who else joins them in the other 3. Thank you all very much for watching. If you haven't, please subscribe and check out some of my past reviews. I'll see you next time. Later.